Kurt, NBA free agency has blown my mind. I mean, as soon as it happened, like at midnight, my mind was blown. And now I've been trying to just understand what happened. I've been going through the wreckage of the NBA landscape. First and foremost, we have to start with Kevin Durant requesting a trade the day after Kyrie Irving opted into his player option. What? What is your take on this?
Well, look, Kevin Durant was obviously put off by they didn't have a great season. They got swept out of the playoffs last year. They didn't look that good. He was also frustrated. He and Kyrie Irving, and he said he's tighter with Kyrie Irving now than he was before last season. And the Nets drew a line in the sand with the organization on Kyrie. Like, oh, you want to get traded? Go find a trade. You think you've got a market out there? And so ultimately he has no choice but to opt in. I mean, he could have played for the Lakers for $30 million less, but no. So like he's going to take the money. He opts in, but it makes Durant unhappy, and he's not happy with the direction of the organization, and he asks out. And it has, you're right, absolutely thrown a lot of stuff into just chaos right now. And it's settled a little bit. I mean, the expected stuff happened, like, max extensions for Zach LaVine and Zion and stuff we knew was going to happen happened. But there's stuff now starting to bottleneck up because everybody's kind of waiting to see what happens. And the Nets are in no rush because they looked at what Minnesota overpaid for Rudy Gobert, and they said that if Rudy Gobert gets that, Corey,
wow,
he's giving up for Kevin Durant.
Yeah, let's before we get back to Kevin Durant, let's talk about that Rudy Gobert thing for a second. I mean, when I saw this haul, because the words that Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets, they're looking for a monumental haul, end quote, right? This Rudy Gobert trade was the definition of monumental. I mean, we're talking Patrick Beverley, Malik Beasley, Walker Kessler, Jared Vanderbilt, Leandro Bolmaro, and 4 first-round picks. All of that for one player. So what? I mean, you would have to like trade an entire team, maybe some of the training staff, maybe some of the weight room guy. I mean, you would have to trade like half the front office to get Kevin Durant. What's it going to take to get Kevin Durant on your team? And those guys are still like, there's more than half the teams in the NBA saying, hey, we'd be interested. What's it going to take to get him out? So, I mean, that level of cost might bankrupt their franchise. Yeah.
What has Danny Ainge got? What is his ability to like hypnotize other GMs into massive paydays to his team? He has pulled some huge trades where he's just gotten, you're like, how much? And this is one of them. Look, I think, by the way, Minnesota got better. Like, make no mistake, Minnesota is going to be good next year. This is an admission that Karl Anthony Towns is their star player and their best. Well, I don't know. He's their best offensive player now. Anthony Edwards will be their best offensive player. But I mean, they've got these 2 offensive pillars. But Karl Anthony Towns isn't a defender. And so they went out and got the best defender on the market, or in the league maybe. I think they're going to be really good. I think they're potentially top 4 in the West next year. They got better. But I think where everybody paused is that the payment that, like you said, 4 first-round picks, 3 of them unprotected, 1 top 5 protected, plus this year's number 22 pick, plus a bunch of players, plus all this stuff, a pick swap, all of that. If you're the Milwaukee Bucks and you give that up to get Drew Holiday in because you're 1 piece away, I get that. Like, if you're the Clippers and you give that up to get Paul George because you're going to get Kawhi Leonard and they haven't won yet, but they've put themselves in position, I get that. This is still not a contender. This is still not. I don't believe so. And so that's a lot to give up to be good. And maybe that's enough. Maybe for a Minnesota franchise that has only one time in its history gotten out of the second round, being really good for 4 or 5 years is a huge step forward. Corey, it changes the market. And by the way, back to the original point, it changes the Kevin Durant market because that's now the baseline.
Yeah, that is, it's kind of like when you see in the NFL, or really any league, but especially in the NFL recently, this quarterback signed what? And then everyone else goes back and says, okay, wait, a month later, we're going to break that record. I think about the wide receiver market that just like the record was broken 3 times in a month. I just had to keep refreshing my phone and keep sitting down because I was floored. I was like, I cannot believe that they're getting NBA money as wide receivers in the NFL. And it's the same kind of thing we're seeing here. If Rudy Gobert, I know he's a defensive player of the year multi-time. I know he's, a defensive pillar. He was a part of one of the best teams in the NBA for a while with the Utah Jazz. and he's very good at what, pick and roll, dunk the ball, block shots, affect the defense. I mean, he's very good at that. But for that cost, I just keep thinking about this as far as like investing. If that's the cost, I can't help but think that you overpaid. And then I can't help but think that, well, now how does this affect? I mean, if you're going to overpay for Rudy Gobert, you're definitely going to overpay for an MVP and Kevin Durant. And then will you then be in a position to win now getting Kevin Durant? The whole point of getting Kevin Durant is that he's in his prime, 33-ish, right? And he's going to help you ball out today, get a championship today, right? But like if you sideline the whole franchise, you're going to have a repeat of the Nets, are you not? You're going to have another 2 or 3 years of satisfied superstars, no consistency, nothing's going to gel, and then you're going to end up having to swallow this huge bill. I don't understand the thought process here, but that Gobert trade to me was the pivotal moment that the rest of us are just going to have to reckon with when you think about Kevin Durant's value, and it's going to be astronomical.
It is, and I think your point is really valid, which is there's a lot of teams who would like to get in, and look, every 29 teams should be calling. Well, let's be honest, 28 teams. The Knicks don't need to bother. They won't send them to the Knicks. But 28 everybody should be calling. But there's really only a few teams that, like you said, could give up. You can kind of construct. This is why Phoenix is kind of considered the front runner, right? Like if you're doing and you probably need a third team, but if you do a DeAndre Ayton sign and trade, and Bridges is gone, but you can still pair Chris Paul and all their depth with Kevin Durant, you're there now, right? Like, and Devin Booker, obviously, I didn't mention him. Like, obviously, you're in the mix, and you're going to have to find some front court help and stuff, but you're there. It's why Toronto keeps getting mentioned. It's a name I've heard around the league, only because, hey, you want a really great player? Here's All-NBA Pascal Siakam. We'll give you OG Anunoby, and you've still got Kevin Durant with Fred VanVleet and just Gary Trent Jr., like just a good team that can contend instantly. So,
oh no, because to me it kind of reminds me of the whole Kawhi Leonard Toronto team. It's like, but the difference is what we've seen with Kawhi is we haven't seen him in LA win yet. But the thing about Kevin Durant, I think, is really interesting is I don't know if he's that franchise cornerstone that's going to immediately help you win a championship. We saw it in Oklahoma City. We saw it in Brooklyn. Like it's not the case. But in the Golden State Warriors, that system, he was perfect because your job is to be an assassin, period, end of story. And Kevin Durant's the baddest dude out there in that regard. Like that job description, Kevin Durant is numero uno, right? So to me, going to Toronto is going to be a repeat of the Nets or the Oklahoma City Thunder. Because like I said, just the cost is too much. I think in a best case scenario, which is probably unlikely, but Miami, because like what it's going to cost. But if Jimmy Butler is that guy, right, he is the embodiment of the Heat culture. Like the ownership, GM, coach, everyone knows what it means to be a part of that Heat DNA, right? All you do is just add in that Kevin Durant magic like you did in Golden State, and that's going to be NBA Finals caliber Kevin Durant again, right? That's where he excels. Like in Golden State, Kurt, like Steph was the guy, Draymond, Clay, like they're all, protecting that culture. Adding Kevin Durant or subtracting Kevin Durant doesn't change anything. They still won without him. They still, so my whole thing is Kevin Durant needs to find that place for him that allows him to just be kind of like a add instant, flavor now without disrupting the entire chemistry or culture. And I think Miami is the best place. I think Phoenix is still too young because Devin Booker is that guy, but I don't think he's had enough time to establish a flavor there yet.
That's why the Celtics come up and just talk, because a Jaylen Brown-based package suddenly puts them. You've still got Tatum, you've still got Robert Williams, and all that. It's an interesting idea. I've heard the Celtics just aren't that thrilled because, hey, you know what? They're really good now. They went to the finals. Do they need to blow? Hey, we made it to the finals and push it to 6 games, and we're young. Should we blow this up for Kevin Durant? I mean, would you, Corey? I don't think I'd do that.
I would not either, because I think, and they actually did the Celtics and free agency, right? I'm just like still swirling, Kurt, but I think they made probably the best move, right? Because they were able to, in the past, 2 years, kind of construct that roster. They got Derek White, which I thought was one of the best moves last season, and then in free agency this year, I think they got they were probably the team that made the biggest jump, getting better without affecting that core. So to me, they're doing things the right way. They don't need Kevin Durant to come in and dramatically change everything. They were in that Bucks Drew Holiday scenario. They just needed one piece, and I think they got it.
Yeah, Malcolm Brogdon coming in, I think, gives them. There was points in the playoffs where you're like, okay, is Marcus Smart really the best our third best shot creator? And I love Marcus Smart, but Brogdon is an offensive upgrade over that. And by the way, quietly, they picked up Danilo Gallinari, like as a free agent. Oh, we got a 6'10" guy who's a knockdown shooter. Like and we can use him in certain matchups. Like I'm with you. I think Boston went from very good to like they and the Bucks probably are my favorites in the East. I'm not sure how I would parse between them right now. Like that is such a great offseason for them. And Durant, the market slowed down on him. I think it slowed down only because now they're getting into, hey, these are the serious offers. They've kind of intentionally, like we're in the public negotiation phase of this, right? Like negotiating through the media. Hey, we're not in a rush. We'll bring them back in the fall. They don't want to bring them back in the fall, but what they want to say is we're not going to be rushed. We're not having some artificial deadline. Like, right? Like, no, we're going to wait till we get a good offer.
And I think that's wise. The problem with the Nets, though, is they're dealing with so much drama. I think that's the only word I can think. It's just been theater. It's been Broadway, in Brooklyn for the past, since Kyrie and Kevin Durant got there. And do you want to talk about Kyrie, or should we move on? What do you think?
Well, Kyrie, I will say this. With Kyrie, he's going to end up a Laker. The only question is what that deal looks like. Is Westbrook going out? Does he go to a third team? Is Joe Harris part of it? Is Kendrick Nunn? Are the picks unprotected? They're working it out. You know how many teams are clamoring to get their hands on Kyrie Irving right now? You can tell where he's going. I would be shocked if he's not a Laker when the season starts.